Hello, humans. I am Scott Cannon coming to you live on WLTH 1370. I'm from the greatest city in all the world, Gary, Indiana. And this is the Counterpoint. Well, folks, I have to ask, did everyone see President Trump's Oval Office address last night? Nah, me neither. And not because I was boycotting it either. I just had more important things to do. I mean, Daniel Bryan is having an epic heel run on WWE SmackDown. And Klay Thompson completely went off against the New York Knicks last night. But from what I've heard, Trump did exactly what I was expecting of him. Blaming Democrats for the government shutdown. Either completely lying or falsely representing the extent of illegal immigration to the country. All the while claiming that Mexico is eventually going to pay for his magical wall of destiny. Now, I'm not going to completely reiterate my stance on illegal immigration. I'm against it. Because that's what I do every Monday on Issues and Answers with Jonathan Booz at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. But what I did find ironic about Trump's totally predictable and lowly regarded speech last night was that it came on the 55th anniversary of one of the most important presidential speeches in the history of our country. Lyndon Johnson's State of the Union address in 1964, where he declared war on poverty. Imagine, instead of explaining to the American public why we have to continue fighting costly wars that don't work for us, bail out billionaire banksters, and cut benefits to the poor, the sick, and the elderly, a president decides to actually fight for those people and implement programs that benefit them. And at least momentarily, that's what we had. The programs were a part of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society that aimed to make America a more equitable place for everybody. First off was the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964, which created the Community Action Program, Job Corps, and Volunteers in Service to America, VISTA, which was considered the centerpiece of the war on poverty. Then came the Food Stamp Act of 1964, which I admit was not totally beneficial to the black community because it started to push black men out of poor households, leaving matriarchal community, but at least it had its heart in the right place. After that was the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which aimed to narrow the education gap between the poor and the wealthy, and famously gave us Head Start, a program that has benefited millions of people. Finally, we got the Social Security Act of 1965, which created Medicare and Medicaid, an unprecedented attempt to make sure that everybody could get medical care, even if they were poor and or disabled or elderly. Obviously, these programs were immediately attacked by the right wing in America because, well, they hate everyone who isn't rich, especially if they're black, but overall the programs proved mostly effective. In conjunction with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Great Society programs massively cut poverty from close to 20% to an all-time low of 11.1% in 1973, in which we almost eradicated poverty in this country in the early 70s. In the black community, the results were even more dramatic, with black poverty rates being almost 60% in the early 60s to falling to less than 30% just 7 years later. Now, of course, none of this lasted because, as I stated, the Great Society and all of its war on poverty programs were immediately attacked by the elites in this country, and piece by piece, the programs that benefited all these poor and working class people, especially blacks, were constantly under attack. Richard Nixon dismantled the Office for Economic Opportunity and started the war on drugs to wage war on hippies and black people. Ronald Reagan defunded many of the programs and expanded Nixon's war on drugs. But shockingly, the death blow to Johnson's war on poverty didn't come from a Republican. It came from a fellow Democrat, as Bill Clinton put the nail in the coffin of Johnson's Great Society by lobbying for welfare reform in the late 90s, while at the same time expanding mass incarceration and deregulating Wall Street. Over 50 years later, not much of Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty remains, as poverty has shot up over the past decade, while we continue to fight dumb, expensive wars and cut benefits for the poor. But if there's anything that we can learn from that all too brief shining moment in the history of this country, is that when we have will and strong leadership, anything is possible. Okay, folks, chop it up with me on Twitter. At The Chemist Lives. The Chemist is spelled with the K, as I'm a product of the Gary Community School System. We could talk about politics, music, sports. You can tell me how terrible I am at this job, or you can listen to me every Monday from 6 to 8 on Issues and Answers with Jonathan Booz and the McGee Report, brought to you by the hostess with the mostest, Jamelia McGee. I am Scott Cannon, and that was the Counterpoint on WLTH 1370 AM. God bless the working class. God bless organized labor. I'm out, humans.